Noah slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "My house, my rules." His voice shook the walls, and my heart jumped so hard I couldn't breathe. I stood there, frozen, watching his face twist with anger I had never seen before. For a moment, the whole room felt like it was closing in on me. And that was the day I knew my life had to change forever. Before we dive into the story, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a story like this. The rain started before sunrise. I remember the sound. Soft at first, then louder, like tiny fingers tapping on the window of my small bedroom. I sat on the floor with my knees to my chest, hugging myself just to stay calm. My room was the only place in the apartment that felt safe. Even that safe was small. 4 walls, 1 bed, a tiny lamp. But even with my door closed, I could hear them. Noah and his aunt, Denise. Their voices filled the whole apartment like thunder. "She needs to follow the rules, Noah," Aunt Denise shouted. "You are too soft with her." "I know, she acts like this place belongs to her." I closed my eyes. Because none of this was true. Noah and I were good friends before all this. We shared the rent. We shared the bills. I even paid him extra every month just to help keep things steady. We never had a single problem. Until Aunt Denise moved in. She stayed for a few days, but those days turned into weeks. Then weeks turned into months. And slowly, everything changed. She talked to Noah all the time, whispering, complaining, telling him I needed to know my place. At first, Noah defended me. Then he stopped. He started giving me rules, strange rules, unfair rules. And every time something went wrong, even the smallest thing, Aunt Denise told him it was my fault. Soon, they both turned on me, and I went from being his friend to being the problem in the house. I pulled the blanket around my shoulders tighter and listened to them argue in the living room, their voices rising with the storm outside. Noah sighed. "She should just be grateful she gets to stay here." My heart dropped, because he knew the truth. I wasn't getting anything. I was paying my share, always. And yet, he let Aunt Denise paint another picture, one where I was the burden, the unwanted guest. My chest felt tight. My heart beat fast. I didn't want to cry this early, not today. But that morning, something inside me felt different, like a little seed of strength trying to grow. I took a long breath and waited for the storm to pass. But it didn't. At exactly 7:42 a.m., there was a loud bang on my door. Bam, bam, bam. "Harper!" Noah's voice cut through the air. "Open this door right now." I closed my eyes for one more quiet second, then stood up. When I opened the door, he stood there, wearing a gray hoodie and a stare that felt sharp. Aunt Denise sat in the living room behind him, wrapped in a bright red robe, sipping coffee in the loudest way possible. What is it?" I asked softly. "The dishwasher," Noah said, waving his hand like he was pointing at a disaster. "You loaded it wrong." I blinked. I thought I did it the way you showed me." "You thought wrong," he said. "Now I have to redo the whole thing." Aunt Denise shook her head dramatically. "Some people don't know how to help themselves." My cheeks grew warm, but I stayed quiet. I always stayed quiet. Noah stepped closer. "Harper, this is my house, and everything must be done my way. That's how things work here." I nodded slowly. "Okay, I understand." But Noah wasn't finished. "You need to do better. I work all day. I need peace when I come home. I can't come back to mistakes." I wanted to tell him I also worked. I wanted to say I also went to school. I wanted to say I was trying my best. But I kept the words inside, because speaking only made things worse. Speaking made Aunt Denise roll her eyes and Noah raise his voice. So I just whispered, "Okay, I'll try harder." He smiled, but not in a nice way. "Good." He walked away toward the kitchen, but I didn't move. I stood in the doorway feeling the heaviness in the air, the smell of coffee, the sound of rain, the dim gray morning light. It all wrapped around me like a cold blanket. Aunt Denise looked at me over the top of her mug. "You should be grateful," she said. "Noah is giving you a roof over your head." I didn't answer. She didn't know I was saving money. She didn't know I was trying my best every day. And she didn't know how tired I felt inside. I silently wished for peace, a place of my own, a place where I could breathe without fear of making someone upset. But not today. Noah stood in the hallway again. He looked at me like he was waiting for something. Maybe he wanted me to say sorry. Maybe he wanted me to feel small. He stepped close, so close I could hear his quiet laugh. Then he leaned down just a little. "Harper," he said, "if you don't like it, then don't stay here." He smirked, like he already knew I had nowhere else to go, like he believed I would stay forever. I held my breath, and my heart whispered one thing I had never allowed myself to think before. What if I really didn't stay here? I thought the dishwasher moment would be the worst part of that week, but I was wrong. Things began to change in small ways, quiet ways, things that most people wouldn't notice right away, but I did. I noticed everything. It started the next morning. I woke up early for work, walked into the hallway, and felt something strange. The air was cold, not just cool, cold like winter. I wrapped my arms around myself and walked to the thermostat on the wall. When I tried to tap the screen, a message popped up. "Locked. PIN required." I froze. Noah had locked the thermostat. Again. The rain outside had stopped and sunlight peeked through the window blinds, but inside the apartment felt like a freezer. My fingers felt stiff from the cold. I whispered to myself, "Why? Why would he do this?" As if the apartment could hear me, I heard footsteps behind me. Noah walked out of his room with a cup of coffee, singing like he didn't notice the freezing air. When he saw me near the thermostat, he smiled. "Oh yeah," he said, sipping from the mug. "I locked it. Energy costs are high. Can't waste heat." "But it's really cold," I said softly. He shrugged. "Wear a sweater." Just like that. No warmth, no kindness, just rules. I turned away slowly and felt that same tight feeling in my chest again, but I stayed quiet. I always stayed quiet. A few days later, another thing changed. The TV remote went missing. I checked the couch, the table, the TV stand. Nothing. The living room felt too still, too controlled, and when Noah walked in, he said it calmly. "I put the remote in my room. If you want to watch something, ask first." He said it like asking was a normal thing, like asking for permission to breathe air. And then, the fridge. That same evening, I opened it to get my dinner, and all my food, every single thing, had been moved to the bottom drawer, the drawer people usually use for fruits. On top of my meals was a yellow sticky note. "Keep your things down here." My throat tightened. I didn't want trouble, so I closed the drawer quietly. But Aunt Denise saw me from the kitchen table. She was peeling an orange, the smell filling the room. She looked at me with a small smile. "You better behave, Harper," she said gently, but her words felt sharp. "Noah saved you by letting you live here." Those words stayed in my head like a bell ringing over and over. Saved me? I worked. I studied. I paid rent. I cleaned. I minded my business. But still, they made it sound like I was lucky to even breathe the air in the apartment. I tried to ignore the cold, the hidden remote, the food drawer, the sticky notes. But the next thing I saw changed everything. It happened on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I came home from class early because my professor canceled the last lecture. The apartment was empty. For once, silence felt peaceful. I set my bag down and started to make a cup of tea. That's when I noticed a small stack of mail on the kitchen counter. Most of it looked normal, ads, coupons, a magazine. But one envelope stood out. A white envelope with bold red letters on the front. Urgent. Mortgage notice. My stomach dropped. I knew it belonged to Noah. His name was printed clearly. Noah Grant, 1430 Poplar Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. My hands moved before my mind did. I picked it up and flipped it over. The envelope wasn't sealed. Not even a little. Something inside me whispered, "Don't look." But another voice, louder this time, said, "You need to know." I slid out the paper. My eyes moved across the page, and then they stopped. Past due payment. Immediate action required. My heart jumped. Past due? Why was his mortgage past due? Why didn't he pay? Why was he acting so powerful if he was behind? I stared at the paper, my hand shaking slightly, because if Noah was behind on his mortgage, then everything was about to change. I sat in the small break room at Sunny Mart Grocery on Franklin Street, holding my warm cup of cocoa with both hands. My fingers were shaking a little, not from the cold, but from everything inside me. Maya sat across the table, watching me with her soft eyes. She was the only person who truly listened to me without telling me to be grateful. I told her everything. The locked thermostat, the chores list with only my name, the way Noah smiled like he owned the whole world when he dropped my food in the lowest fridge drawer. Maya placed her hand over mine. "Harper," she said quietly, "you don't have to live like that." Her voice was so gentle that it almost made me cry. I blinked fast and nodded. "I know, but I'm stuck." "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You're just scared. That's not the same thing." Her words hit my heart in a deep way. Right there, in that noisy break room with the old vending machine humming in the corner, something inside me woke up. A small spark, a tiny light, a soft whisper saying, maybe I can change things. So I made a plan. Just a small one. Nothing big, nothing loud. Every shift, I put $1 into my shoe, another into my coat pocket, and sometimes, when I got lucky with tips, I pushed a few crumpled bills deep into my backpack lining. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And while I saved, I also worked on something else in secret. Late at night, after Noah went to sleep and the house became quiet, I pulled out my phone and opened the glowing email from Evergreen Home Supplies, the company I always dreamed of working for. They had a new position open, assistant inventory lead. It paid more, a lot more. I filled out the form slowly, carefully, making sure every word was perfect. I prayed they would see how hard I worked. I prayed they would choose me. I told no one, not even Maya. That same night, after I finished the application, I went to warm some leftover rice. The house was dark, except for the small kitchen light. I heated my food, then wiped the microwave inside and out like I always did. Or I thought I did, because later, just as I changed into my pajamas and sat on my bed, I heard it. Bang, bang, bang. Noah's knuckles on my bedroom door. "Harper," he called out, his voice sharp, "did you forget something?" My heart jumped. I looked at the door like it could open on its own. I whispered, "What now?" He knocked again, harder. "You didn't wipe the microwave the right way." I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But instead, I stayed quiet and said calmly through the door, "I'll clean it in the morning." Silence. A long silence. Heavy, thick, like the air was holding its breath. I hugged my pillow and lay my ear against the cool wall. I could hear him breathing on the other side of the door. I could hear each slow step he took, closer, then stopping. Right there, outside my room. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't even swallow. Slowly, very slowly, I whispered to myself, "I can't stay here forever." And that was the first time, the very first time that I truly meant it. But then, Noah's footsteps stopped, right outside my door, not moving, not leaving, not saying a single word. Just standing there, listening, waiting, watching. My whole body froze as I stared at the door, afraid to even breathe. And that's when the thought hit me like a cold wave. What if he heard me? Friday evenings were usually my quiet moments. After my long shift at Sunny Mart, I loved walking home slowly, feeling the cool air on my face, imagining a future where everything felt peaceful. But that night, the moment I stepped onto Briar Lane, I knew something was wrong. There were cars parked everywhere in front of the house. Loud music pulsed through the windows. Laughter burst out from the backyard. And I thought, wait, did Noah plan something? I walked inside, and the whole living room was full of people. Some I had never seen before, some from Noah's gym, all holding red cups and laughing like they lived there. Someone had even thrown a jacket on the couch where I usually sat. Noah stood in the hallway, grinning and drinking soda like it was a party made just for him. He didn't even look surprised to see me. "Oh," he said loudly, "you're home. Don't break anything." Everyone around him laughed. I felt my cheeks grow warm. I didn't even know there would be a gathering. Not a call, not a text, nothing. But then, something even worse happened. Just as I tried to walk upstairs, two of my friends from work, Leela and Bree, walked in holding a small gift bag. They had told me earlier they might stop by to drop off something they bought for me, a cute planner to help me stay organized for my small money-saving plan. Their faces lit up when they saw me. "Harper, we were just—" Before they could finish, Aunt Denise appeared like she had been waiting for this moment. She wiped her hands on her apron, looked at my friends, then pointed at me with a small laugh. "Oh, sweet girls, Harper is basically a charity case. We only let her stay here out of kindness." The whole room went silent. I felt like the walls moved closer. My legs almost gave out. My friend's smiles faded into confusion and sadness. "Aunt Denise?" I whispered, but she lifted her hand. "No, let me speak," she said proudly. These girls deserve to know. Harper should be grateful. Noah saved her by letting her live here. She has nothing on her own. Everyone around her nodded like they agreed. And then Noah laughed. Not softly, not shyly, but loudly, like it was the funniest thing he had heard all week. My friends looked at me with wide eyes, holding their gift bag like they no longer knew what to do with it. "Sorry, girl. I didn't know it was this bad," Leela whispered to me. And that moment broke something inside me. Not the part of me that was scared, not the part of me that stayed quiet, but the part of me that still believed things could get better in that house. I felt tears burn behind my eyes, but I forced a smile and whispered, "Thank you for coming." Before they could say anything else, I turned and walked upstairs. Slow steps, steady steps, until I reached my room. I shut the door, locked it gently, and let my back slide against it. When the first tear fell, it surprised me. Then another, then more, and soon I was hugging my pillow, crying so softly, trying not to let a single sound escape my room. The music downstairs kept playing, the laughter kept rising and falling, but inside my room, it felt like the world had stopped. I kept hearing Aunt Denise's voice in my head. I kept seeing Noah's smile. I kept feeling the sting of everyone staring at me. My chest felt tight, but slowly, something else replaced the sadness. A new thought, a new fire, a voice whispering inside me. They don't get to decide my life. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and reached for my phone. At exactly 11:38 p.m., right when the last tear slid down my cheek, my screen lit up with a new email. The subject line read, "Congratulations, Harper. You've been promoted." My heart jumped. My breath stopped. I stared at the screen like it was glowing. Then another thought hit me. Should I tell anyone? I did not sleep that night. My mind kept running in circles, but in a good way this time. I kept thinking about that email. "Congratulations, Harper. You've been promoted." For the first time in a long time, I felt a small light inside me, like a tiny candle that refused to go out. I hugged my pillow and whispered, "I am getting out of here." The next morning, I woke up early, before Noah or Aunt Denise made any noise. It was still dark outside, and the apartment felt calm, too calm. I sat on my bed and listened carefully. Nothing. No footsteps, no loud TV, no slurping coffee, just quiet. I opened my closet and pulled out a small empty box I had kept from my last online order. I placed it on my bed and started folding my clothes slowly. I only packed 3 shirts, 1 pair of jeans, and my favorite sweater. I told myself, just a little at a time. He won't notice. Every night for the next few days, I did the same thing, quietly packing small pieces of my life and taping the boxes tightly. I used old grocery bags to wrap my shoes so they wouldn't make noise. I hid everything under my bed until Maya picked me up after work. Maya always smiled and said, "Put them in the back. My garage is your garage." Her kindness almost made me cry each time. On Wednesday evening, I got a call from my mom. Her voice sounded warm and full of hope. "Baby, whenever you're ready to leave, your dad and I will drive down from Cleveland. Just say the word." I closed my eyes and let her words sink into my heart. "Thank you, Mom. I think it's almost time." My mom paused for a moment and said softly, "We just want you safe, Harper." Safe. Such a simple word, but it felt so far from where I lived. That same week, I did something surprising, even to myself. I stopped reacting to Noah's rules. When he complained about the way I folded laundry, I said nothing. When he accused me of using too much soap in my own shower, I just walked away. When Aunt Denise shook her head and said, "You better behave," I simply smiled and went to my room. I guess my calmness scared him, because for the first time he looked confused. His eyes followed me around the apartment like he was trying to figure out what was different. One night, I was wiping the kitchen counter when he leaned close to me and asked, "You're quiet lately. What's going on?" I just shrugged. "Nothing. I'm fine." He didn't like that answer at all. He stood there staring at me for a long time, tapping his foot on the tile floor. But I stayed calm, because in my heart, I already knew the truth. I was not staying here much longer. That Friday evening, after work, Maya drove me home. I opened the back door of her car and pushed in 2 more boxes. "You're almost done," she said, smiling. "Yeah, just a few more things." Inside the apartment, I walked straight to my room and hid the empty box I had gotten from Sunny Mart earlier. I cut off the label and tossed it in my trash bin. I didn't think anything of it. Just trash. Nothing important. But Noah's aunt had different ideas. Around 8:20 p.m., I heard slow footsteps coming down the hallway. Aunt Denise always dragged her slippers when she walked, so I knew it was her. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. I froze. My heart started beating fast. Then I heard the crinkling sound of plastic. Someone going through the trash. A few seconds later, her voice cut through the hallway like a sharp knife. She turned toward Noah's room, lifted her hand, and knocked hard. I watched her knock again, this time louder, and she said the words that made my chest tighten. "Noah, she's planning to leave." The apartment felt smaller than ever that night. Every shadow seemed larger, every sound sharper. I was sitting on my bed, carefully folding the last of my shirts into a small box, when I heard the door slam. Noah stormed into my room like a storm cloud, eyes dark, fists clenched. His hoodie hung loosely on him, but his anger made it look heavier. Behind him, Aunt Denise hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. "You," Noah shouted, pointing at me. "What is this?" I stayed seated, hands folded neatly on my lap. My heart was racing, but I didn't let it show. He stepped closer. "Don't play games with me, Harper. I know what you've been doing. Packing, planning to leave, to abandon me." I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady. "Noah, No, don't talk," he interrupted sharply. "Do you think you can just take off and leave me here with nothing? If you leave, I will lose everything. You owe me." I felt the words like a weight on my chest. Owe him? He didn't see me as a friend or even a tenant. He saw me as a tool, a shield against his failures. But I didn't answer. I kept my calm because I had learned long ago that my reaction only fueled him. He leaned closer, his face only inches from mine, and I could smell the faint coffee and mint from earlier. "Noah, if you leave, I will lose everything. And then what? You'll feel guilty. You'll regret it." I looked him straight in the eye. "I don't feel guilty for living my life," I said softly. He slammed his hand on the edge of the desk. The pen holder jumped and rattled. My heart jumped with it. "Don't act so calm. You think this is a joke? You think you can just—" I held up my hand gently. "Noah, please just calm down." His nostrils flared. Aunt Denise muttered something under her breath, but I didn't pay attention. I had rehearsed every word in my head for weeks, every excuse, every smile, every calm tone. He pointed at me like a weapon. You're planning your little escape, trying to leave me broke while you run away with your new life. You selfish girl. I smiled faintly. My fingers twitched over the box next to me, the one with the papers inside, the signed papers for my new house. No one knew, not Noah, not Aunt Denise. I said quietly, softly, I'm not going anywhere. Noah blinked. His face went from anger to confusion. He frowned and took a step back. His chest heaved as if he had run a mile. You're lying. His voice was low, almost a growl. You're planning it, aren't you? You're trying to leave me here with nothing. I nodded politely. No, I'm not. He stared at me like he was trying to read my mind. His jaw tightened and he shook his head. You can't just... I stayed calm. I didn't say another word. I let him breathe, let him believe he had the power. Inside, I felt a small victory bloom. My heart raced, not with fear, but with excitement. Every second that passed, I was closer to my freedom. Every heartbeat reminded me, this house would soon be mine, my rules, my life. Noah finally turned away, muttering under his breath. Aunt Denise followed him out, shaking her head. The hallway fell silent again. I leaned back against the wall, exhaling slowly. My eyes fell on the small box sitting quietly on the floor. Inside it were the papers that would change my life forever. My new address, my new beginning. And I realized with a small smile how close I really was.
The sun had barely risen when I heard the familiar rumble of a car pulling into the driveway. I looked out my bedroom window at the quiet street. Rain from the night before had left everything sparkling. My parents' old blue minivan sat waiting, warm and steady. "Harper," Mom called softly, smiling. "Baby, are you ready?" I grabbed my bag and followed them outside. The air smelled like fresh grass and flowers, and the birds were already singing their morning songs. The tension in my chest started to melt just a little. I realized I hadn't felt this peaceful in months. The drive to Westerville, Ohio felt almost magical. I sat in the back seat, staring out the window, watching the houses glide by. They were so different from the cramped apartment on Poplar Avenue. Each yard was trimmed, neat, and full of life. Kids' bikes leaned against fences, neighbors watered their gardens, dogs barked happily in the distance. "Almost there," my dad said with a wink. When we pulled up to 877 Maple Ridge Lane, my breath caught. The house was beautiful. 2 stories, cream-colored siding, dark shutters, and a welcoming front porch with hanging flower baskets. The lawn was green, soft, and freshly mowed. Everything was calm. Everything was perfect. I stepped out of the car slowly, taking in the quiet street, the gentle rustling of the trees, the golden sunlight spilling over the rooftops. I felt my chest expand for the first time in months. I could almost taste the freedom. Mom and Dad smiled at each other knowingly. "It's all yours, Harper," Dad said. Inside, the house smelled faintly of new wood and paint. The living room was empty, echoing softly when I stepped across the hardwood floors. I ran my fingers along the smooth surface of the staircase railing, and it felt real, solid, permanent, and mine. We went through each room carefully. The kitchen sparkled with new appliances, the bedrooms were bright and spacious, and the backyard opened onto a quiet, tree-lined street. I could already imagine morning coffee on the porch, peaceful evenings reading in the living room, laughter with friends and family filling the air. Then we reached the dining room where a table was set up for the signing. The mortgage papers were neatly stacked. My hand shook slightly as I picked up the pen. Each signature brought me closer to leaving the past behind. "Just one more," Mom whispered, smiling, her hand brushing mine. I signed the final page, a wave of relief, Excitement and pride washed over me. I was really doing it. I was really starting my new life. The agent handed me the keys with a congratulatory smile. "Welcome home, Harper. This is yours now." I held the keys in my hand like they were a treasure. My chest felt full, my heart felt light, and I knew this was the beginning. But as I stepped into the empty living room, soaking in the sunlight streaming through the large windows, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I froze. It was a message from Noah. The words made my heart skip a beat. "We need to talk." I stared at the screen, gripping the keys tightly. The sunlight streaming through the windows suddenly felt different, brighter, warmer, but the message sent a cold shiver down my spine. I whispered under my breath, barely believing it myself. "This is my new beginning, but what does he want now?" The first morning in my new home, I woke up to sunlight spilling across the living room floor. It felt warm, soft, and safe, so different from the gray, tense air of Poplar Avenue. I stretched and walked barefoot across the hardwood, feeling it cool beneath my feet. Everything smelled fresh, new wood, clean paint, and the faint scent of flowers from the small garden my parents had helped me plant. I poured a cup of coffee, the steam curling into the air like a promise, and opened my laptop. The promotion had finally gone through. My new salary would give me independence, security, and the freedom I'd only dreamed of. I couldn't stop smiling. I typed a quick message to Maya. "I'm finally free. I can breathe." Work went smoothly that week. I felt lighter, more confident. I reconnected with old friends over lunch at Sunny Mart, laughing freely, feeling the kind of joy that had been buried under months of stress. Every smile reminded me why I had fought so hard for this life. Every laugh told me I had chosen the right path. Meanwhile, back on Poplar Avenue, life had shifted in ways I couldn't imagine. Noah was struggling. I didn't know the details at first, just fragments that reached me through mutual friends. Mortgage notices piling up, calls from the bank, his boss frustrated with missed deadlines and unfinished reports. Aunt Denise's visits became rare, almost non-existent. Friends who had once dropped by now kept their distance, whispering that Noah had become difficult. I felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. This was the man who had tried to control me, who had made me doubt myself every day. And now he was floundering, losing the stability he claimed as his right. I walked through the kitchen, sipping my coffee, thinking about how strange life could be. One day, someone holds all the power. The next, they are powerless. And the universe seems to correct itself in quiet, inevitable ways. I leaned against the counter, scrolling through my phone, when I saw a message from a mutual friend. The text was short, but shocking. "Harper, I just heard. Noah might lose the house." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Could it really be true? I had been gone for just a few weeks, yet already the balance had shifted so completely. Images of Poplar Avenue flashed through my mind. Noah yelling about the dishwasher, Aunt Denise shaking her head, the cramped rooms, the constant tension. And now, that house, the place that felt like a cage, was in danger. A part of me wanted to rush back, to see it all for myself. But another part, my heart, my mind, knew better. I was safe now. I had my freedom. I had peace. I had a life I could build without fear. Yet the news made me pause. What would Noah do if he lost everything? Could he handle the consequences of his actions? My stomach tightened with curiosity. I didn't feel anger, not really, just wonder, and a quiet satisfaction that the world sometimes delivers justice on its own. I looked around my new home again. Sunlight danced across the walls. The air was warm. Birds chirped outside. My life was moving forward. And yet,
I couldn't shake the thought that lingered in the back of my mind. Sometimes, watching the storm from a distance is just as thrilling as being inside it. I tapped the phone screen again and whispered to myself, I need to see this. What's happening with him now?
I was sitting on the sofa, wrapped in a soft blanket, sunlight spilling through the windows, when my phone buzzed. I didn't expect anything from Noah, but there it was. Dozens of messages, one after the other, all from him. At first, I ignored them. I kept sipping my coffee, watching the birds hop along the garden fence outside. But curiosity finally nudged me, and I opened the first message. Harper, please, I didn't mean to lose control. You have to help me. I'm falling apart. Then another. I can't believe this is happening. You left me in the lurch. I worked so hard, and now everything is gone. This is your fault. And another, longer, twisting back and forth, blame, apology, fear, excuses. He even tried to guilt me. If you had stayed, I wouldn't be homeless. You owe me. Please. I set the phone down. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. I felt calm. I had lived through months of fear, control, and constant rules. I had survived. And now, Noah was facing the consequences of his own choices. Later that afternoon, I heard from a mutual friend again. Harper, he's lost his job. The bank sent the final foreclosure warning. Utilities are off. Even his car is gone. I closed my eyes and breathed slowly. I remembered the apartment, the shouting, the constant tension, the my house, my rules mantra. And now he had none of that. No control, no power, no comfort. Days went by. His messages kept coming. They grew more frantic, more desperate. He begged, pleaded, twisted the story to make me the villain, apologized for things he had done. It was exhausting just reading them. But I didn't reply. Not once. I didn't need to. He was learning on his own what it felt like to have stability ripped away. I had my life now, my peace, my new home. And I stayed there, watching the sun rise and set in quiet moments that had once seemed impossible. Then, one chilly evening, I noticed something online. A photo sent by a friend. It showed his old house on Poplar Avenue. The lawn was overgrown, the curtains crooked, and the mailbox tilted slightly. But the strangest part, yellow sheriff tape stretched across the front door, fluttering slightly in the wind. I stared at the screen, my fingers frozen. Sheriff's tape? Across his front door? I couldn't help but remember every harsh word, every unfair rule, every night spent tiptoeing around him and Aunt Denise. And now, life had shifted in ways I hadn't dared to imagine. I leaned back on the couch, heart racing. I didn't feel joy or glee, just the quiet sense of justice. Natural, inevitable, and strangely satisfying. Sometimes the world fixes itself. And yet a tiny voice inside me whispered, curiosity, a little spark of suspense. What would he do next? Would he fight? Would he finally learn from the fall? Or would he simply disappear from the story forever? I picked up my phone again and stared at the blank screen. I didn't type. I didn't respond. I just sat, feeling the calm that had once seemed impossible, knowing my life was moving forward while his had come crashing down. The sunlight spilled across the living room as I carefully placed the last book on the shelf. Everything was finally in order. My favorite novels, a few old journals, and little trinkets I had packed carefully over the past weeks. Each item felt like a small victory, a tiny proof that I had built something new for myself, a life where I didn't have to tiptoe, apologize, or hide. The wind moved softly outside the windows, and the birds sang their morning songs. I smiled to myself, enjoying the calm. It was quiet, peaceful, almost perfect. Then a knock at the door shattered the stillness. I froze. No one I knew would come by unannounced, not this early. My heart skipped a beat, a small flicker of unease running through me. I took a deep breath and walked to the door. When I opened it, I saw him. Noah, or rather, the shadow of the man that I had known. His clothes were wrinkled, dirty, and damp from the morning dew. His hair stuck out at odd angles. Dark circles lined his eyes, and his usual smug expression was gone, replaced with something I had never seen before. Exhaustion. Defeat. Noah. His voice was low, strained. Please, can I stay here for a while? Just until I figure things out. He looked smaller somehow. Not the controlling, bossy man who had pushed me around for months, but smaller, vulnerable. I didn't answer immediately. I studied him, feeling a mixture of curiosity, caution, and quiet satisfaction. I could see the weight of all his mistakes pressing on him. His job gone, his house gone, his pride shattered. He shuffled his feet nervously, looking anywhere but at me. I don't know where else to go. I can fix things, I promise. I'll pay you anything, please. I tilted my head slightly, keeping my calm. My fingers rested lightly on the door frame. Inside, the house smelled of coffee and fresh paint, of life and new beginnings. And I realized I had no obligation to him anymore. None. Noah swallowed hard. His hands shook as he held them together. I didn't mean for things to go so wrong. I just need a place to stay. I studied his face, the broken pride, the fear, the pleading. He thought this would make him powerful again, that I would open the door and let him in, that I would make everything right for him. But I didn't move. I didn't speak. Finally, I broke the silence, slowly, calmly. Why are you really here, Noah? His eyes flicked up at mine, and for the first time, I saw confusion. Not the fake, calculated confusion he had once worn to manipulate me. Real confusion. I just need a place. He whispered again, but something in his tone betrayed him, something unspoken. I leaned slightly on the doorframe, my gaze steady. The wind outside rustled the leaves, and the sunlight caught in the corners of the room, highlighting every detail of this moment. The air seemed to hum with tension. I realized that this wasn't just about a place to stay. There was more, always more. And for once, I wasn't scared to find out what it was. I smiled softly, the corners of my lips barely twitching. Calm, in control, ready. And just as I waited for him to answer, I whispered under my breath, I need the truth, Noah, before you step inside. The sunlight streamed through the windows, hitting the hardwood floors of my living room. I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed, calm but alert. Noah shifted nervously on the porch, glancing at the mailbox, the garden, and finally at me. Harper, please, hear me out. I don't know where else to go. He began again, voice low, almost breaking. I'm homeless. Aunt Denise, she doesn't want anything to do with me anymore. My friends, they've stopped calling. I have nothing, Harper, nothing at all. I stayed quiet. My calm stare held him like a mirror, reflecting back all the mistakes he had made. He swallowed hard, fumbling with the edge of his jacket. I thought you would never abandon me. I always thought you'd understand. You'd help me. Every word dripped with desperation. He expected sympathy, expected me to open the door, let him in, maybe even carry him through this storm he had created. But I didn't. Not even a flicker of that old fear stirred in me. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel guilt. I only felt clarity, peace,
strength. I watched him shuffle from one foot to the other, the weight of reality pressing down on him. This was what losing control looked like, what losing power felt like, and he had chosen this path. He had built it himself. "I can pay you," he stammered, his voice cracking. "I'll do anything. Just let me stay. I promise I'll fix things. I'll be better. I lifted a hand, stopping him mid-plea. My voice was calm, deliberate, and steady. "Noah, you should have thought about that before." His eyes widened. He blinked fast, trying to process the words, trying to understand. The silence stretched, heavy with the truth he had avoided for so long. I took a step closer, but not too close. I wanted him to feel the weight of the moment without feeling threatened. I continued. "Noah, you never respected me. You never treated me fairly. You thought your rules, your fear, your threats would control me forever. But I left. I chose freedom. And now, this is your choice. You made this." Noah's jaw tightened. His throat moved as if he were trying to swallow words, apologies, excuses, anything. But there were none left. His chest heaved with shallow breaths, his eyes darting around as if searching for a loophole that didn't exist. I could see the moment it hit him, the realization that I wasn't coming back, that I wouldn't save him from the consequences of his own actions, that he had burned every bridge and now had to face the fall alone. He looked down at the ground, his face pale, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and shame. He expected me to respond with mercy. He expected a second chance that would never come. I stepped back and placed my hand gently on the doorframe. My calm, steady voice sliced through the morning air like a sharp wind. "Noah, I don't owe you anything." His body froze. His eyes widened. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, and then nothing. Silence. Only the wind rustling the leaves outside and the distant hum of traffic. He finally looked at me, truly looked, as if seeing me for the first time. Not the Harper he tried to control, not the one he thought would submit, but the Harper who had built a life, who had earned peace, who had chosen herself. Noah whispered, barely audible, his voice trembling. "So, you're really done with me?" The sun was climbing higher, painting the sky in soft gold and pale blue. I could hear birds chirping in the trees along Maple Ridge Lane, the gentle hum of a neighbor mowing their lawn in the distance. Peace, finally, felt tangible. I took a deep breath and let it fill my lungs. Noah was still standing there, leaning against the railing, his clothes rumpled, his hair wild, his eyes red from sleepless nights. He looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way that years of control and arrogance had never allowed him to be. His hands trembled slightly, and when he tried to speak, his voice cracked. I held up a hand. Calm, steady, strong. "You told me to leave if I didn't like your rules, so I followed them." His lips parted, as if trying to argue, but no words came. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I had nothing to fear anymore. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small list I had prepared earlier. It had addresses, phone numbers, and directions to real homeless shelters and transitional housing in Columbus. I handed it to him without a hint of hesitation. "These places can help you. I can't, I won't, but you can start over. You have to."
Noah's eyes darted down to the paper. He stared at the names, numbers, and addresses as if they were foreign languages. His shoulders slumped. A quiet sob escaped him. I could hear it now, low and trembling. I stayed on the porch, my stance firm, my gaze unwavering. He had expected pity, sympathy, a hand to pull him back into comfort. But life had rules too, Noah, and this was the rule. You face your choices or you face the consequences. Aunt Denise's words from years ago echoed faintly in my mind. She had always been his enabler. But now, she wasn't here, and I wasn't anyone's pawn. I had taken my life into my own hands, and it was beautiful. Noah sank to his knees, clutching the paper like it might save him, and I knew this was a moment he would never forget. Not because I punished him, not because I shouted, not because I humiliated him, but because I had finally removed myself from his control. I took a step back, letting the morning light fall fully on my face. I had earned this peace. I had fought for it, and now I would protect it. He looked up at me once, tears streaking his face, and whispered, almost too quietly for me to hear, I didn't know it would end like this. I simply nodded, my lips curving into a small, calm smile. I said, "You can start over, but not here, not with me." The Wild rustled the edges of the list in his hands. I turned slowly toward the door, my fingers wrapped around the handle. Noah's sobs filled the porch behind me, echoing softly in the morning air. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I pushed the door closed slowly, deliberately. The sound of it clicking shut felt like a bell, ringing the end of one chapter and the start of another. Months had passed since that morning on the porch, the morning I finally closed the door on Noah, forever. Since then, life had unfolded in a way I had only dared to dream about in the cramped, tense apartment on Poplar Avenue. Every day felt lighter. Every morning felt like a gift. Work had been amazing. The promotion I had received weeks after moving had allowed me to settle fully into my new home. I decorated it the way I wanted. Bright walls, cozy furniture, shelves filled with books and mementos that reminded me of my journey. I even planted flowers along the walkway, little bursts of color that made the house feel alive. I reconnected with friends I had drifted from, and they were part of my world again. We laughed freely, shared stories, and created new memories. My parents visited often, proud smiles on their faces as they watched me thrive. I had built my life from the ground up, not as someone's guest, not as someone controlled, but as myself. And then there was Noah. It wasn't long before news of him reached me, though I hadn't sought it. A mutual friend mentioned seeing him walking past his old house on Poplar Avenue, the one he had fought so hard to control, the one he had thought would always define him. He carried a worn backpack, his clothes wrinkled, shoes dusty. Homeless, tired, lost. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hatred. I felt clarity. Karma had a quiet way of teaching lessons. Life had returned exactly what he had given to others. Every shout, every manipulation, every "my house, my rules" moment had circled back. And the best part? I hadn't done anything to force it. I had stayed silent. I had stayed focused on my own life. And that silence, my peace, had become the loudest justice of all. Days passed, weeks passed. I focused on myself, my work, my friends. I took long walks, enjoyed my garden, read books on the porch. Each day felt like freedom wrapped in sunlight. I smiled often, laughed easily, and slept well.
No anxiety, no fear, just life, fully mine. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived at the mailbox. I almost didn't recognize the envelope. It was official, crisp, with the company's logo. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it, my heart fluttering with curiosity. Inside, the words jumped out. Another promotion. A chance to lead a new department, more responsibility, more recognition, and more reward. I sat on the porch, reading and rereading the letter, a smile spreading across my face. My life was moving upward. My future was brighter than ever. I looked at the garden, the house, the sunlight dancing on the walls inside. Every decision I had made, every moment I had chosen myself over fear, had brought me here. And far away, somewhere, Noah carried his backpack past the house he had once claimed as his kingdom. A reminder that pride and control without respect only lead to loss. I took a deep breath, savoring the quiet, the clarity, the truth. Life, I realized, always returns what you give to others. Compassion, respect, patience, and self-respect. It all comes back in ways you may never anticipate. And sometimes, silence is the loudest, most satisfying justice of all. I tucked the letter into my bag, took one last look at the morning sun, and whispered to myself, "This is my life, my peace, and nothing can take it from me."
My life had become simple again, and I loved the quiet more than anything. I didn't think about Noah much, not because I was angry, but because my heart had finally found rest. People in the neighborhood smiled at me when I walked my street. I planted small flowers in front of my house. I cooked dinner in peace. I slept with no fear. Everything felt soft, and I held on to that softness carefully. Weeks later, something happened that I didn't expect. It was a Saturday morning. The sun was bright, and the air smelled like fresh grass. I was cleaning my living room when I heard a soft knock on my front door. Not loud, not rushed, just gentle. I froze for a moment. Then I opened the door slowly. Noah stood there. But he did not look like the Noah I used to know. His shoulders were down. His eyes were tired but calm. His clothes were simple and clean. And in his hands, he held a lawnmower. He didn't try to smile. He didn't try to step inside. He just stood on my porch with quiet eyes. "Hi, Harper," he said softly. His voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't big. It was small, like someone who had learned to speak kindly again. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Noah looked down at the mower, then back at me. "I'm doing yard work around the neighborhood now," he said. His voice shook a little. "If you need help, I can do your lawn too. You don't have to talk to me. Just leave the payment on the porch." He wasn't proud anymore. He wasn't angry. There was no "my house, my rules." No yelling, no blame. Only humility. Only a quiet man trying to fix his life in the smallest way he could. For a few seconds, we just looked at each other, and in that silence, I felt something I didn't expect. Peace. Real, soft peace. Not because Noah changed, but because I had changed. My heart was steady. My home was safe. My life had moved forward. I nodded once and said, "Okay, thank you." Then I stepped back inside and closed the door gently. No slam,
No anger, just a calm goodbye. I placed the payment on the porch like he asked. When I looked through the window, I saw Noah take it with a slow, grateful nod. He didn't try to talk again. He didn't try to come inside. He simply pushed the mower across my lawn, neat and steady, like someone who understood life in a new way. He finished the work, placed the mower back beside him, and walked away down the street. Quiet, respectful, calm. And I stayed in my home, my warm, peaceful home, the home I worked for, the home where my heart finally grew strong again. Noah learned his lesson quietly. I lived my new life proudly. And for the first time ever, we both found a very different kind of peace. The soft kind, the gentle kind, the kind that doesn't make noise, but changes everything.